Hi, as Dr. Hall just said, my name is Laura, and I'm going to talk to you about decisions.
Oh, me and you doing everything together forever! Oh! We're redneck Siamese twins! Listen to your drunk teammates! Twinsies! That's over a good idea. Oh, I love trees, man!
Oh my god.
Suicide twinsies! Oh!
Now, as you can probably tell, these were not good decisions. Those were not good decisions because they acted rashly and they got hurt by doing something stupid just to show off to their friends. Their parents would also have to pay for the hospital bill for those kids, so you should think of the consequences before you do something that stupid. Decisions are very important in everybody's lives. They help people learn lessons, and decisions can affect you for the rest of your life. There's a quote that says, "Sometimes it's the smallest decisions that can change your life forever." Carrie Russell. A book I read called The 13th Reality, The Journal of Curious Letters by James Dashner, the author of the Maze Runner series, demonstrates this quote perfectly. The book says that every time that you make a significant decision, a new reality branches off of the one that you live in. In that new reality, you didn't make that significant decision, and events in your life play out with the consequences of not making that decision. There are consequences for every decision that you make, good and bad consequences. A decision that I made that had a consequence was starting a fence. I saw people sword fighting on television, and I wanted to try it. When I did, there were only a couple of girls in the class. Most of them left the class eventually, except for one girl named Bryn. She is still in my class to this day, and we are good friends. And every time we fence, we know what the other is going to do. Not all decisions can have good consequences, though. For example, for most people, if they make the decision to not go to college, then the consequence of this is that they may not get a good job or have a good life. If you want to make good decisions in your life, you can use many methods to make the best decision that you can. One method is that you can make a pros and cons list. You can do this in your head or write it down on a piece of paper. Making a pros and cons list helps you to weigh the positive and negative sides of making a decision. This will help you to analyze the outcomes of each decision that you can make. This is usually what I do when I make decisions. I weigh the pros and cons to see if making the decision is really worth it. Another thing that can help you to make good decisions is that you shouldn't make a quick, rash decision unless it is absolutely necessary. You shouldn't because you may not think about the results of the decision. You can also pretend like you're advising a friend. It is said that when you have to make a big decision, your emotions can cloud your judgment and prevent you from making the best decision that you can. When you make a decision, you need to think it through and consider the consequences. You may also want to be careful of how much information you take in. Psychologists say that if you take too much information in, your mind will change how much something really matters in your decision-making process. You have to keep the number of facts and opinions that you take in to a small number.
What should I do? This is the toughest decision I've ever had to make. Decisions are easy. Just flip a coin. Let's see, I got a quarter, a nickel, and a dime. Well, which one should I flip? Man, decisions are hard to make.
I know that decision making isn't easy most of the time. Like if you have Mrs. Shelhorn's test and practice sheets due on the same day. You have to decide whether to study for the test or to do the practice sheets. For the 6th graders who haven't experienced this yet, get ready. This is a very hard decision. Another decision is one that every 8th grader has to make this year. It's usually very difficult to make, is what high school we're going to go to. An example of a decision that was very hard for me personally was getting my first cat, Geronimo. I got him about 3 years ago at Mainline Animal Rescue. When we got to the shelter, my sister Emily and I had to decide which cat to get. We didn't want to get a mean cat, or our dad would never let us forget our bad choice. He didn't even want a cat in the first place, so he would try to get rid of him if he didn't like him. Making the decision of getting the right cat wasn't easy. especially having to agree on which one to get with my sister. We had narrowed it down to 2 cats that we wanted. They were brothers named Durango and Wrangler, but we couldn't get both of them. Eventually, we came up with a compromise. If Emily got to name the cat, I could pick which one we would get. The people who worked there told us that Durango weighed 1 pound less than his brother, and he was more cuddly, while Wrangler was more playful. After learning that, we were both leaning towards Durango. But the problem was he had a heart murmur, which meant that he might need surgery later on in his life. I weighed the pros and cons of getting him, and in the end, I chose a skinny little cat, originally named Durango, who turned into a fat cat named Geronimo. The heart murmur didn't really matter to us. We love him anyway. My sister and I realized that he isn't fat, he's just fluffy. The picture frame is courtesy of Tegan. Another decision that I made was to start working with computers. I got interested in computers by going to a technology camp called ID Tech Camp at Villanova University. I've been going there for the past 4 years. During those 4 years, I've made computer games, animated a short clip, and programmed a robot using LEGO Mindstorm Robotics. Along with the rest of the school, I've also started to program using the computer language Python. By the way, thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for introducing me to this language. I also got a solar robot building kit for my birthday this year, and so far I made a turtle robot and one that rolls on wheels. I also made one that can swim. To build these robots, I used my knowledge of physics to help me with making it. I won't go into the specifics, but the robot works because photons, or the particles of light, go into the solar panel and knock the electrons off of the atoms, which makes electricity flow. I found it important to know this because alternative energy is important to the future of the Earth, as Mrs. Sheldrick has taught us 8th graders. Without my decision to work with computers and robotics, I would have never learned this. That information might even help me with my solar car project at the end of the year. I've also learned the physics equation behind it. Mrs. Sheldrick, aren't you proud? In conclusion, decisions are important in everybody's lives. Or as a man named Jim Rohn puts it, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you get off on sometimes. What matters most is getting off. You cannot make progress without making decisions. Thank you for listening.